Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, Season 4, Episode 5. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charles Lebois.
Our very special guest on this episode is Ricardo, chef, author, television personality, entrepreneur. Ricardo is all that and much, much more. Appointed to the Order of Canada and the Order of the Nationale de Quebec for his contributions to Canada and Quebec. He sold his business to Sobeys. We're going to talk about that. He's still producing content at a prodigious level. It's very impressive. He's a media, a food powerhouse. So I bet if I walked through your kitchen, I'd probably find a couple of his cookbooks.
4 or 5 at least, absolutely. Yeah, he's. I think Chef Ricardo really is a good example of this ego-less cuisine. He has no attitude. I mean, a lot of chefs out there are putting on a show. That's not Ricardo. Ricardo actually makes cuisine very accessible, very simple. He's an amazing communicator. His business, along with his wife, is so successful. They have about 200 employees, and they're just amazing merchandisers. You walk into a store, you often will find a Ricardo product, and so it's just been an amazing story. So I'm really glad that he accepted our invitation.
Yeah, it's a great interview, and we'll get to that a bit later. Now you're on the road right now. You're, I think, in the Twin Cities. Where exactly are you, and what the heck are you doing there?
I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was actually I'm speaking at a conference here. It's called Bridges to Food, and it's a great organization out of Europe, and they organize events all over the world, and so they have seminars like this one in Asia, in Europe, and in the Americas, as they say. Mm-hmm. And this year it's actually in Minneapolis. So they invite me over to talk about some of the research that we're doing on plant-based products. But also I am going to be talking about cultured meat, insects. I mean, the whole protein play happening, which is really, I think, very interesting. So I'm going to be the only Canadian. All of the people that are in the room are American executives from different companies, and as you know, Minneapolis is recognized as this food hub along the Mississippi River, and so you have Cargill, General Mills. You also even have Target joining us today.
Big grocer. Target's a big grocer. Big numbers.
It's. I mean, you walk around town here. There are Targets everywhere. You just feel that downtown is one gigantic Target store.
Well, it's their home city, and Target's a great organization.
And you're a retailer, so you would know that probably the Best Buy is also located here.
That's right. Those are the two big hitters in, so to speak, in Minneapolis, so I'm well aware of that. Now, you just mentioned the mighty Mississippi, and you sent me a note this morning that you went for a run along the Mississippi and you noticed something. I guess it's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to experience it firsthand. It seems like climate change is having some challenges to the food distribution or movement of goods along the Mississippi. Talk about that for a little bit.
Well, the Mississippi is really the backbone of America's ag economy when it comes to moving grains. I mean, it's the cheapest way to move grains on water. And I got to tell you, this morning I actually saw spots where there were rocks, and I've seen the Mississippi several times, and I've never seen the Mississippi being so low. I'll be honest, and I've been hearing it in the news, and of course, what that means right now, being in October, is that a lot of companies are looking at putting everything on a truck and move it down the river, but that's going to add to cost. Sure. It's going to cost farmers, and it's going to make grains more expensive too, and fertilizers as well. So when I saw that this morning, it's at a record low ever, and you can see it just by looking at it.
You know, it's funny. So sometimes we talk about climate change, and climate change is always a very anodyne word, right? It's just like, it's so simple. But you know, I love the story that you told this morning, briefly, and what we're talking about, because it actually lends example to what we often say, or what you probably say in front of, when you're talking to the ministers. Like, climate change matters. It affects the price in a very material way. It's one of the forces that we need to understand better. And, you saw it.
Well, I mean, there's no denying. I mean, every day you see examples now of climate change being an issue. And so I know there are climate skeptics out there, but it's becoming harder and harder to remain a skeptic, to be honest. Yeah, there's examples every day. And the Mississippi River is a gigantic river, a very important component to the ag industry here in America. So, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a challenge.
A reminder to everybody, changing tact here a little bit, remind everybody you and I will be together, speaking of traveling, at the Coffee Association of Canada's annual conference, November 9th. Run, don't walk. I think they're close to selling out. So if you want to go see us and visit and hear some of the thought leaders in the coffee industry, it's a great conference, great speakers. You'll be speaking, but we'll have a little pop-up podcast studio chatting.
Yep.
So links.
Looking forward to that. We had fun last year.
We had fun last year. We will have fun again. So that's November 9th coming up in Toronto. Great venue too, the Globe Mail Center, which is a beautiful venue. So run, don't walk. All right, let's tap into the news. The dairy farmers finally read the room. Take mercy on Canadians. Support new price. I guess this lets the feds off the hook a little bit about having to manage this file. In other words, or does it take an initiative they were going to announce? They're saying, "Hey, Dairy Commission's not going to raise prices." What kind of? First of all, talk about the news, and then what's your impression of it?
Well, so first of all, it's not necessarily news affecting consumers because it's just really a recommendation made by the Dairy Farmers of Canada. But the Dairy Farmers of Canada will rarely suggest a pause an increase. It will advocate for increases. So this one announcement really caught me off guard. I was actually expecting them to advocate for more money. But they're basically telling the CDC, the Canadian Dairy Commission, to halt an increase. And so we'll know the announcement should come out either next week or the following week. But now, since the Dairy Farmers of Canada are advocating for a pause, there is a good chance that we're actually going to see no increase at farm gate, which means that we're going to put less pressure on processors. Now, does it mean that we'll actually have access to cheaper cheese and yogurt and milk in Canada? Well, that's up to grocers. That's up to processors, really. I guess
it just means it won't go up, potentially won't increase. Well, it doesn't increase to the back door of the processors, but it doesn't roll it back, right?
Well, it's food politics, right? They're out there saying, you know what, we're doing our part as dairy farmers. So they're basically notifying the rest of the supply chain, do yours, making sure that products remain affordable. That's kind of what's going on right now, right? So that's why these groups are out there showing to consumers that they're out there helping. By the end of the day, there are no guarantees that prices will actually drop.
Let's stick with food inflation. We got some good news, which isn't something we talk about, unfortunately, very often. With the recent numbers from Stats Canada, what was it? A slowdown in the rate of inflation. Talk about the numbers and what's your impression?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I thought it was great news. A lot of items are actually cheaper now compared to a month ago, and those products are like tomatoes, potatoes. Flour, coffee even is cheaper now. And we were all expecting that. And so those are certainly good news that we should welcome. And Canada still has one of the lowest food inflation rates within the G7 at 5.9%. Only America actually has a lower food inflation rate at 3.7%.
I'm not sure you can say that often enough. I think the headlines kind of bury the lead, as the journalists would say, that Canada is actually in really good shape. Speaking of which, food inflation, a reminder to everybody, your 2024 report on where you think food prices are going to go. That's early December, right? Was it December 6th?
That's on December 7th. That's
December
right.
December 7th. All right.
December 7th, yeah.
Very good. So that will be as always, an interesting report to run. All right. Well, that's food inflation. All right. Well, that's the food inflation report for the podcast segment. Let's talk about cannabis. So, 5th year anniversary.
Yes.
by any measure, success. We've moved the majority of cannabis consumption into the legal market, safer tax dollars, jobs.
According to Statistics Canada.
Sure, which is done. I mean, the good news is, they've been pretty creative in how they measure that industry. So let's say maybe plus or minus a few percentage, but it's gone well. On the negative side, and it's a long list: bankruptcies, grifters, dreamers, little global presence. Couche-Tard is running away from it, letting their investment in fire and flower go up in smoke. The federal government, I think the industry feels too greedy on the excise taxes, which is, not known movement on improvement in edibles. Could be a whole episode on, the provinces. So, okay, 5 years on, what's your assessment about where we are and where we can be going in the near future in this in a crop called cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, I think 5 years ago, a lot of people were concerned, about seeing a 5-year-old kid ended up at the hospital and seeing people driving high all over the place and killing people, and so none of that happened. I mean, some of it may have happened, but it was really more of isolated events. So I think overall the implementation of it was good. My concern from day one has always been on the edible side. I actually do think there were so many restrictions that we do see a much larger black market. When Statistics Canada actually reports on this legal market of 70%, it doesn't really account for the edible market, which is really not existent in Canada compared to the illicit market that we have. So I think there's some work to be done here because we're actually reviewing the act right now. I do hope that at some point the Cannabis Act will consider a cannabis-infused food product as food and not a drug, and that's really the big key here.
Let's move on. So let's talk about glass houses. So our minister, François-Philippe Champagne, glass houses, I think he owns the Competition Bureau. Endless work on the bread fixing file. Eventually, Metro's getting a little frustrated. What's going on?
Oh, man.
8 years.
I mean, when I
8
saw
years
the
in
news,
the making.
Yeah,
right?
when I saw the news about Metro going after Loblaw, I thought, what are they doing? It's been 6 years. Like, where have they been? But afterwards, of course, since 2017, we've seen Grupo Bimbo come forward, admitting that they were part of this scheme as new owners of Canada Bread. So they did pay a $50 million fine. And of course, a couple of weeks ago, I was actually in the same room as Eric Laflèche and Galen Weston. I can tell you they didn't talk to each other like at all. Now I know why. But at the end of the day, I actually think that Metro's intent is to make a point. Like, let's end this as soon as possible. This is ridiculous. This investigation has been going on for 8 years, and we still don't know what's going to happen with the investigation. So there's no report. There's been no reports, no press release, nothing. And I think that Metro is just fed up being accused constantly. I mean, it's been 8 years that Sobeys has been accused, Giant Tiger, Metro, they've been accused because this one person on December 20th, 2017 decided that all 7 companies are guilty. I think that's the biggest problem here. How do you read this?
Well, I read it that the minister has some work to do in his own house. That's what I read it. Next time he calls...
we're saying the same thing.
All right. Well, listen, great start to the pod. Let's get to our fantastic interview. Such a great interview with Ricardo, Chef Ricardo, recorded live from his home/studio in Chambly, Montreal, Quebec. Well, Chef Ricardo, welcome to the Food Professor podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Super well. It's beautiful. Time is on our side.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Where are we finding you this morning?
Well, right now I'm in my basement, in my man caves, where I have and stuff where I can, create whatever I need to work, and that nobody bothers me. It's the place where no one wants to come in the house, so this is my place.
That's great.
Now, is that in the Bahamas, in Montreal?
No, I'm in Chambly right now. I live in different places, but I'm in Chambly right now. And this house is kind of where we taped the show for over 21 years.
Okay.
And this house has 4 kitchens for different purposes. And so it's the first
4
one. But
kitchens. Oh my goodness.
4 kitchens in this house. But I live also part in Gaspésie, in Percé, and a bit in Florida also.
Well, listen, you've had an amazing career in the culinary industry, and we want to learn more about it. What's your recipe for success, so to speak? How did you get your start? Let's go back to your origin story a little bit, and maybe take us through some critical milestones in a long career and a successful career.
I've been a lucky guy, and I think that luck has a lot of doing in the success of someone. Then the big difference is sometimes chances appears in front of you, and some will jump on it, see it, or try it, and some will fear or won't see it. I've been lucky enough to see these moments, and I've grabbed them, sometimes without knowing where it was going to lead. I'd say, well, to make a long story short, I've studied in hotel management in Montreal at l'ITHQ. It's probably one of the finest management cooking school in the country, and I hated it. But I loved the food part. But hate is a big word, but I didn't see myself in being in an office managing whatever it would be. But we had mandatory classes in wine, in bar, in food, in pastry, and that really, I thought it was so cool, because all of a sudden the white sauce my mom was making to create, vol au vent, all of a sudden it had a name. It was called bechamel, and there was a count from friends behind it. And there was all these stories about food and their names, where it was from. Is it from England? Is it from the States? Is it from France? It was great to me. So I went back to school in Ottawa in broadcasting. And when I finalized my classes, I became a really, really good friend with a guy that is still one of my best friends. He was a Françaiscois, so a French-speaking guy from Saskatchewan. And he said, hey, you should come over. There's an opening at CBC, and you should apply. I did. And I moved out west for almost 2 years. And I was very bad at what I was doing, because they hired me to do that. And I was with the satellites, taping the feeds from Montreal and Toronto, making sure they were on there on the proper time in Regina or in Vancouver. And I missed the spot so many times. So one morning, the boss said, Ricardo, I have to admit, I'm almost, due to my retirement, and you're probably the worst employee I hired in my whole career. But there's a funny part about you. Everyone loves you. Everyone says your cooking is fantastic, and you have more friends in Saskatchewan in 6 months than people born and raised there. What do you want to do for a living? I mean, I can't figure that you will do this for the rest of your life.
You're getting a lot of love and friendship with your food already.
Well, I mean, you're moving to a new province. You want to make a new life. At that point, maybe I was not going to move back, east. When I'm moving somewhere, I'm dedicated to this. I forget from where I am. I was now like a Saskatchewaner. I was happy there. That was my life, and that was it. And he said, he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'd love to host something. I've studied in broadcasting, and right now I'm on the technical side. I love it, but I'm not good at it because it's not the dream I have. He says, if you resign and I give you something to host, would you, accept it? So I said, of course. So I went from a $34,000 a year plus whatever it comes with it to $150 a week. And I said, yes. And it changed my life. And at the end of the deal, I said, but what am I going to host? He says, well, everyone loves your food. Talk about food. Monday, you start. And that was it. It changed my life. Well, because I said yes, it changed my life all of a sudden. So in Saskatchewan, I became a happy man, a man with a purpose in life, a job he liked, friends. And I am from the Maritimes, from Gaspésie. So to me, in the plains, there's something that is similar to living by the ocean. You have to have it. I always thought people who lived in the plains or by the ocean needed a special kind of strength to be able to face it. I mean, infinity every day. But this openness to me is like a new canvas every day. The light is different. The air is different. The colors are different. And I loved every minute in Saskatchewan.
Did you always want to be a chef? Did you want to be in media? Like what took you, what set your feet on that first path?
Like many families in Quebec, well, I'm the last generation of these. I had like about 18 uncles and aunts, over 115 first generation, but over 100 and something cousins. I mean, we were not a family. We were a disease, and we have spread, So food was always part of this. We were dancing at funerals, at weddings, at every. There was always food and fun, and cousins and uncles and aunts. And my mother was a hairdresser, so I've been hugged and kissed and by all these clients. And so when I was a kid, to me, food was everything. When my father was napping in the afternoon, and what do you think I was doing? I was cooking. I was trying things. At 4 or 5, I was creating recipes that were awful, but my mom loved. And it kind of gave me a sense of being good in something. Because when I was a kid, I had no self-esteem. And food gave me that. And this is why giving chances to kids in school to be able to learn how to cook. And I do this through different charities. And I can say to these kids, look how your cookie was fantastic, or your pancakes, or whatever you did. It's impossible that you're good only in one thing. It's my job as an adult to prove to you that you're a fantastic human being and you can change the world if you want, a recipe at a time. So my passion is food, but I'm even more interested into changing lives of people because of food.
So I have a question about the profession. And the question, we talk to a lot of chefs, Michelin star chefs, and people in the industry, and we're very curious about the state of education and preparedness and the environment for chefs coming up. And on the one hand, it feels like, with all of the televised showcase stuff that goes on with the chef, the big wars of chefs, that chefing has been made into something that it may not exactly be. If you were to start a chef school, what would you teach? You mentioned, you were kind of bored about the facts and numbers. Some chefs tell us they wish they learned that more. But do you think that the profession is on the right path?
Well, there's always kind of it comes and goes. It's like a balance, and sometimes you're going to one excess and coming back in the middle. I think we are on the right path for different reasons. First, it's the acknowledgement of something that has a lot of beauty as, way of to earn your life. You're not just a cook because you can't do anything else, or you're waiting. You're a cook because you love to feed people. You love to make sure people are eating together. I love to call myself a cook. Yes, a chef, but to be just someone that will feed his family and friends and people, that is already something unique and so important in life. Then if you want to make a business out of it, I'd say that the new way of cooking in restaurants is way better than what we had before. Why? Because there's less aggressivity. People are more into like listening to what's going on in the kitchen. We've seen, with LA Confidential and all that, like it's not about screaming and being this mean chef that has authority, and all of a sudden it doesn't make you better. It makes you worse. Because if you want to have the best of your team, well, you need to respect them and love them for what they are in their in everything they are. And that is changing. I rarely see now, like, except if you're working with idiots, people that are screaming on their staff. If they do, you should run and work for someone else.
That's very true. I mean, Ricardo's cuisine is there's no ego. There's just no ego, and it's so accessible. So I absolutely agree with your assessment. If it was deliberate, it worked. We have like
Exactly.
We have 3-4 of your books in our own kitchen here, and our kids use your books all the time. So accessible, so easy. It makes cooking just so easy. I mean, it's just that's really what the Ricardo cuisine is all about.
Because you have to remember, it's not when you are cooking for yourself or your family or friends, you're not opening a business. You're feeding people you care for. And
most chefs will not open a business. I mean, by the percentage of chefs, prep cooks or whatever, and most chefs will not run a business. They will
and you have to know that's one of the things. You have to know your place. And soon enough in my career, I realized that I preferred to be an employee than the boss. My wife was better at being the boss. People joke about that because I said, well, all my life I would have been behind her, even though people think she's behind me. But the thing is, when I remember I was probably 12 or 13, and my neighbor wanted me to babysit the kids. And my mother said, well, I have a daughter too. She says, no, we'd like your son because we heard he's cooking in the backyard. I was already barbecuing with my friends and stuff. And we said, we'd like to show a different vision of cooking in the family to our kids. So we'd like your son to come. So I was, going to babysit from time to time and cooking for them. And once I said to the gentleman, I said, I just love your life. I mean, you have a great family and a wife and your house and you're the boss of this. He says, it doesn't matter, Ricardo, to be the boss or the employee. You'll be unhappy in either case scenario if you're not at the right place. Know what you want. And I realized that there's nothing more securing than having a boss that knows where we're going. So if you are a natural leader and you know where you want to go, people will follow. Otherwise, you can be a fantastic trooper like myself. I will run things if I have to, but I put people in charge around me that are more, I'd say, suited for the job than myself. And when I know that I've placed around myself very strong and secure people, then I can be who I am and create and be crazy and creative and do what, and then I'm happy. And that's so important. So in that school, to go back to your question, I would say to these kids, you have to know what is your inner desire, not to what to do. Do you want to run? Do you want to be, what do you want to be in this life? And then everything will position itself and it's going to be a nice ride to go. And since I'm back from Saskatchewan, I have a lot of fun, and I met a lot of people, and and all of a sudden I became someone with a purpose. And I did the same thing with my wife and my kids. I have 3 daughters, 25, 23, and barely 20 now, and I don't know if I'll achieve that, but if I can prove to them that they are fantastic and they are willing to do whatever they want, and that it doesn't matter if you want to be a hairdresser like my mom or an astronaut. To me, I mean, both are equal if you're happy in what you do.
A few years ago, you decided to sell your business to Sobeys. We're just curious, how is that coming along?
Well, it was not planned. And I remember when my oldest daughter, which is working with us now, she was probably 12 or 13. And she said, if you ever sell the company, Dad, I will kill myself. Okay, that's strong of a line. But at the end, when that happened, many companies wanted to buy us over the years. And never really it occurred to me to even think seriously about it until the Sobeys appeared in the radar. Why? Because a local family from the Maritimes.
Yep. Settled in Nova Scotia.
Very, very, I'd say, down-rooted, with who they are. No attitude, no, like just a standard family, even though they're billionaires. And that I liked because I said, we want to go to the top, but as in a family, you won't go far or you will go alone if you're not walking at the pace of the slowest in your family. And the Sobe group, to me, it's like a multitude of business like mine. So, and when you go to any, like, I'd say an IGA in Quebec, it's about 150, 200 employees. It looks like mine. So they have the same issues with transferring the knowledge, keeping, their employee happy, battling, with the economy and all that. And so to me, I'm never working with this huge group. I'm working with families. And I said to my daughter, before you do anything rash, just see that I could see in my lifetime, my dream to be a thriving Canadian business from coast to coast, because forever chefs, even very popular chefs on Food Network or any network, are only popular in their region. And I said, I'd like to be this guy who could be over his lifetime present from Victoria Island to Newfoundland and be able to travel and go there and discover who we are from coast to coast and try to bring this, I'd say, very specific energy we have in the country where it comes to food and family. And I said, if we work all together, even like my company, we're 200, yes, but some have talent to run a business of 1,000 employees or more. Mm-hmm. So I said to my group and my kids, if we do this right, and it will be done properly, everyone will have a chance to go up to their dreams. And I said to my daughter, maybe your dream eventually won't be to run 200. Maybe you will want to run Sobeys. And that's possible. And it's up to you. And you can make a change in the food business in Canada. Make it more local. Make it more accessible. You will be this generation that will learn as 3-4 other generations of Sobeys did before. And as my family started the business, anyway, all that together, it really kind of gave us a boost of energy to kind of make it even stronger. And I said, now that your job will be to take mine eventually, Beatrice, your job is not only to create recipes or nice books. Your job is to save and create jobs. So all these families that are working for us, with us, will be able to have their own family and buy a house and go on vacation and send their kids wherever they need to go to be whoever they want to be. And that changed everything in not only my family vision, but in our group.
Your brand is very strong. I mean, and you get praise for your commitment to healthy eating. But you're also, I mean, you want to treat people well. You want to indulge a little bit. So how do you balance both when in your cooking philosophy as an entrepreneur, as a chef? Ricardo.
I married a nutritionist. So,
she keeps you honest.
Well, we had years of adaptation to each other's, and because I could eat only cakes and dessert and pastry, and of course she introduced vegetables and tofu in my life, and it's the balance of all that. It's the balance. Sometimes you feel like I want to have that piece of pie. Why would you feel guilty? And it's funny because sometimes I'm having, a burger and a poutine, and people will look at me and says, "You're having that?" I says, "Why shouldn't I? If it's the way I feed myself or my family every day, of course I have a problem. But there's nothing better than a good burger or butter and a corn when it's in season and it's fun and it's there. But it's to vary our eating that is good and to be, I'd say, faithful to where you live. I ate differently in Saskatchewan than I eat here, or when I'm in Gaspésie, I eat, somehow differently also because it's the way it should be. I always say Canada is a country of butter. So unless I'm cooking Italian or something around the Mediterranean Sea, yes, I will use olive oil. Otherwise, we are a butter country, like I'd say the vast majority of northern country, or canola oil, because this is what we produce and we've created in the country. So I always try to remember this and teach it through either a show, a book, or my kids or the employees. And I'd say that even for your own economy, it's better, because if you buy local stuff, the taxes, even though local could be far away from sometimes, I live closer to Vermont than Toronto. But if I buy something from Toronto instead of Vermont, all these taxes will go back to our system, and and we will gain as a country because we have social values that are similar from a province to another. So each time you eat, you vote, and each time you buy an ingredients, you kind of make a statement, and the grocery will follow that path because they're there to sell food.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's talk about your creative process around the content that you create, cooking shows or your recipe books, and how wide your aperture is, so to speak, for new products. For example, would you create a cookbook of cultivated meat? This lab grown meat idea. Like, do you look at trends and say, I wonder if there's content I can create from that? Just walk us through for a minute your process and how you do what you do, I guess.
I'm not the guy who wants to create a trend necessarily. I prefer to be helpful. So quite often I will kind of monitor trends and see, okay, it's like 6 months, it's a year, it's there. And if I see that trend is there kind of to stay at least, more than another 6 months, then it interests me to work in that path. And when I'll go back to the tofu and the legumes example. When we started to hear about, like all the environmental issues and all that, and that I realized that we are, producing 95% of legumes in the world. And it's funny that we don't eat more of these great, things that are full of vitamins and proteins and all that, and it's grown and harvested here. So I started to add that more into my, I'd say, daily shows or into the food. I don't want to make something unique and specific about it. I prefer to take a trend that I feel that we would gain from and introduce it slowly, very, like without people noticing it. And eventually it's just part of our diet. When I started and I made the General Tao, tofu General Tao. Well, we went out of tofu in Quebec for a couple of months because all of a sudden people tried it and they realized, it's true, it's good. And I can mix two proteins. I can do half, tofu, half chicken. I will cut on the price, and I will have more proteins. And there's a lot of, just positive, things about a thing like that. Same thing when I created tacos. But if you just shred so very finely your tofu and grill it, it will be crispy. Mix it with half the meat. And all of a sudden, you're changing, the way you're eating. It's more vegetables and more less meat, but at the same time, you will have the flavor. My goal is not to be a vegetarian. It's to kind of follow this line where if we try to change everything at the same time, it won't happen. And we will lose some people in this, thing. But if it's there with fun, entertainment, flavor and taste, and of course you will have the healthy part there and the local part there, all of a sudden everyone will kind of embrace this, and many will kind of create recipes. I've seen so many places where I knew these recipes were from my books or my magazine. I've seen them in restaurants, and many told me, of course, we take your recipes and adapt them for the restaurants or things. And I'm always proud of that. I says, well, because we are 6 in the kitchen, and we were very good because I have created over the years a way of creating a recipe. It's not only about the ingredients, it's also about how it looks. I want, when you look at one of my recipes, because I have very specific points they have to respect when we create a recipe, even in measurements. I will never mix together, I'd say, 1/3 of this, 3/4 of that, and 3/4. It looks complicated. You know, like even the measurements have to fit and be there. And we're 6-7 people working on each recipes. So the recipe I'll start, I won't finish it. The beauty of this is, let's say I'm doing a sticky toffee pudding. Well, I'm doing it. I'm satisfied. I wrote the first version. I'm going to give it to you, Sylvain. And then you try it again and you have notes. You said 15 minutes where it took me 20. And you said a 1/4 cup where I needed half one. All these notes will go back then to Michael that will take it back. And at the end, we have something that works and is foolproof. And then we have someone that will just take care of the French or just take care of the English. And we have specific words. Do you want to bring to a boil, or what is the word you are going to use? So when we hire someone, it takes at least a year and a half before they become Ricardos, aficionados that knows how to write and create the recipes. And it's tough it's like writing songs. You can write a couple and they're very good. But to be Paul McCartney, to be able to be and write songs that are as good 30, 40 years later, that's another type of talent. And I always say to my teams, when you see other companies trying to either copy or do things, we are not sprinters. We are doing a marathon. Don't lose your energy on looking at other stuff. Be aware, but we're just running in our direction, not the directions of others. And you'll see people will come and go. And you want to be there in 20, in 30, in 40 years. And it's not going to be me. It's not going to be them. It's going to be the next generation who's going to run. But if you keep this vision that my grandmother had, then I think you could be there for a long time.
Last question for me, and then I'll pass the mic to Sylvain to bring us home for the balance of the interview. What's next?
Well, the next I'd say the most complicated and beautiful part is to make sure everyone find his place. Make sure that this dream we have to be something strong from coast to coast, because to be there is one thing. But as I said, it's not to be there. You want to be part of something. And that will take the rest of my life. And I just hope I'll be, this eventually a spectator where I'm looking at my team and this is, wow, I love what you just did. Or I'll be, like next week I'm in Toronto to work, and you go to a grocery store and you see the marinade that you have created, with, a piece of veal that is local also. And you have this sense of pride. But that is a never-ending process. If you think you're there, you will lose it. It's humility, start over again. You make your mistakes. When I go to grocery stores or I buy stuff, it's just to make sure that I haven't lost it or that we stay close. So it's easy to buy everything you want downtown Montreal or Toronto. But the real test to me is to go to any other smaller cities in the country and to go to a grocery store and look at the dairies, look at the meat, look at the fish, look at what do they have? What do they have on hand to cook? So sometimes I come back to my kitchen and I say, hey guys, we lost it. I mean, we have to, go like a bit more like relax on that spice of that thing because it's impossible to find. So then and encourage everyone to, when they travel the country, look at all the grocery stores. We have to be close. We're not restaurants. We're there to help people when they're coming back home. They're tired. They have sometimes money issue, time issue. These are the people we want to work for, and we have to have answers. And just staying like on the ground and doing this, I think it's, as long as we'll do this, I think the business could be thriving.
Since you're on our show, I want to ask you one specific yet very simple question. Do you have a personal cooking tip you can share with our audience when cooking at home? Anything at all? What would you suggest?
You know what? It's not a tip on how to cook. I would say it's more an advice. When you have friends over, you're serving something on your table. Don't excuse yourself. I mean, I see this all over all the time. Oh, sorry, I forgot this, or it's a bit overcooked, or I should have done this. Don't complain. Don't explain. It's like the Queen, because you took your time. You took your time, money, effort. People who are coming to your place are happy you're feeding them. I mean, if they're not happy, maybe they don't deserve to be at your table. I mean, it's really, to me, it's like, people are way better than they think. If you put half the time in your kitchen that people put in their own job, 8 hours a day, imagine everyone would be a chef. Of course. And the other thing is, like, let's say it's far, but it's close at the same time. The holidays will come. You know what? I will make the same menu for everyone. And I will keep for the end the most important person to me. So if it's your grandmother that is the most important to you, well, then cook this same dish, the same meal 4 or 5 times to everyone else you will have over the Christmas holiday. And at the end, you'll be just fantastic because you know exactly how long it took. You know if you had enough, if you had too much. And if you were doing this with your partner in life, well, everyone knows it's like a ballet. You know who's doing what. And all of a sudden, the meal goes so smoothly. People don't even realize, like, all that work has been done because you knew. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves where the pressure shouldn't be there. It's a moment to share, you know, and I wrote in our restaurants, eat together, the best suits you well. And we have to remember this to ourselves. The best suits us well. And we deserve this because we worked for it and we're not there to complain. We're there to appreciate this hamburger or this steak or this whatever we have. It's not about the money. It's about being together.
Mm-hmm. That's great. What a joy to have you on our show, Chef Ricardo. Thank you so much for your time. It's just been great. I've been following your career for a very long time, and I have the utmost respect for you, your wife, your business.
Well,
it's been great.
Compliment because everyone is in the business. We're always intrigued and see what is going to Sylvain write in the paper next time because it makes big things. I mean, sometimes you write something in the paper, and the next meeting we have. Well, all of a sudden, we're discussing about this, being totally in agreement, sometimes asking ourselves some questions. Why did he see it that way? So we need people that will bounce things and force, us to kind of position ourselves towards different subjects. So I could return the compliment to you, Sylvain.
Thank you, Chef Ricardo. Again, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to you.
Thanks. See you next time, guys.
Take care.
Last week we were talking about that you were going to testify in Halifax to the Finance Committee, but that was delayed, I understand, yes?
So on Wednesday night before the testimony, I get a phone call from the clerk asking me if I wanted to testify in Ottawa instead. And I said, well, no, I'm fine. Halifax is great. Well, in Halifax, there's no video conferencing, and it wasn't going to be recorded. And I said, because I've testified many times, but I've never testified outside of Ottawa. This was the first time outside of Ottawa. And when I was told that it wasn't recorded, I said, well, yeah, I'll go to Ottawa, and I was able to physically go to Ottawa. So I'm actually hopping on a plane tonight. I'm flying into Ottawa in the evening, and I'm doing my thing tomorrow. And along with me, I'll have Jim Stanford, the economist from the Center for Future Work, joining me as well on the panel. So, but I don't think he'll actually be there. I think he'll be in Vancouver.
It's great to have dialogue from all angles, right? So hear from all kinds of voices.
Exactly. That's all kinds of opinions, democracy. Right? Yes, that's right.
If we only heard one voice, that would make not for a fulsome discussion of these very, very important issues to Canadians.
Exactly. So, you're here.
Now, one question about that. You mentioned a couple of times, and I had a couple of people ask me what it was, and I couldn't really give them a good explanation. The SNAP program. Is that like a food? It's one of your recommendations. Is that like a food stamp? Spend a minute or two on what the SNAP program is, or what your recommendation is in this regard.
So my recommendation won't be to replicate what's going on in the U.S. with the SNAP program. I'm using the SNAP model as an example of some of the things that we can do. And they are SNAP-esque program in existence in Canada already.
Now, what is SNAP? What is SNAP? You start even basically. What are you talking about?
So SNAP means Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And it can actually take many different forms. In Canada, we actually have some SNAP programs linked to farmers markets. In Nova Scotia, in Montreal, and in BC, there are farmers markets giving gift certificates to people in need. Now, when a merchant actually receives a gift certificate from a person, the merchant doesn't know why that person has a gift certificate. It's very discreet. But it gets people to farmers markets, and it gets people to spend money only at farmers markets, buying local food, fresh food, and good food. And so my recommendation in Parliament will be to nationalize a program like that to support farmers and to help people in need as well. And it's really a cheap way to do it. You don't need the administration that you see with the SNAP program in the U.S., because the SNAP program in the U.S. is super administrative and expensive. Only with Montreal, for example, with Jean Talon, they actually got a gift for $50,000 from Desjardins to support the program. You don't really need a whole lot. All you need is our NGOs supporting people who actually need the money.
There's a great article in the New York Times about researchers using CRISPR, the technology, to try and eliminate bird flu in chickens. Bird flu is still a big deal where you are, right?
Oh, absolutely. Big deal. And so CRISPR is a wonderful technology. And of course, a lot of people are up in arms. If you're a biologist and you believe in the laws of nature, you would be against CRISPR. But CRISPR can actually do wonders in animal science and plant science as well. Because it's about rewiring genes to allow animals and plants to fight certain diseases, and that's how you can actually make agriculture more sustainable. Some people don't agree with that, but I actually am a big fan of CRISPR, and I encourage people to look into it.
You're very relevant to where you are and what you're doing today. There's an article talking about actually in the National Post about plant-based meat industry. It's from the Financial Times, needing to rebrand itself as a healthy option. You know, when I talk about plant-based to a lot of people, the first thing they say is, it's worse for you. Like when you look at some of the ingredient decks, it's too much processing, it's too much. I feel like, ironically, some parts of the plant-based industry have got a bad reputation for processing the plant-based food, and they feel like they need a rebranding. Would you agree? And what are you hearing at that conference today?
I absolutely agree, and I actually am going to say that. I think that we need to work on the lexicon of the industry, whether we're using plant-based or vegetable protein. I think we really need to think hard about how we position these products, how we sell them, and how we present the value proposition overall. We've implied that plant-based is more nutritious, but we also, what happened with the Beyond Meat invasion, I mean, time and time again, some groups were saying that these products are not as healthy. Right. They're ultra processed, and it shows in our data. I mean, a lot of people do think that these products are not as healthy, and that's a problem. No. And that's a problem and I think the lexicon, the language around the category needs to be reworked a little bit.
The skeptic in me feels like the traditional competitive industry of meat-based farmers fostered this notion of high processing and plant-based, or am I being too?
Of course they did.
cynical?
No, of course they did. You're absolutely right. And when you talk to a cattle rancher, and I'm going to say that today, when you talk to a cattle rancher, they actually firmly believe that their product is plant-based.
Right, because their cows are eating plants.
They eat plants.
Well, listen, you've got a busy day ahead. You got a flight, you got testimony, you lead an interesting, busy life. I'm here at home in the home studio, looking forward to seeing you. Looking forward to being together very soon.
Once in a while, actually, I talk to you when you're under palm trees. So can you give me, I'm in beautiful, exotic Minneapolis. Come on.
I've never been to Minneapolis, so you got me there. So there you go. And okay, so, I'll end on one thing. I was in New York last week. and I had a amazing experience. So for anybody listening who happens to be in New York City now, soon, I went to a fantastic restaurant called Red Rooster in Harlem. And me and my friends who were there at a conference. There's 4 of us, all came out with the same conclusion. This is some of the best food we've ever had. The tastes were unique. The service was fantastic, and the vibe was excellent. So Red Rooster, I'll put a link to it. I highly recommend.
Oh, good.
Head up to, I think it's at 135th Street. So it's a bit of a hike. But run, don't walk. Next time you're in New York and looking for a great food experience, Red Rooster. So there's my reco for anybody go to New York City. Well, that's the episode. Thanks for joining me on the mic, making time to do this. I'm Michael LeBlanc, podcaster, keynote speaker, consumer growth expert, and you are?
I'm the food professor and Michael LeBlanc's sidekick, Sylvain Charlebois.
All right, everybody. Sylvain, safe travels back home to Ottawa and then back home, and I'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.